The story begins after the First World War, when the entire world was struggling with an economic crisis and the rising tide of fascism. Many people had become frustrated with this modern world. They opposed violence, wrote about peace, and believed that real life existed only within nature. At that time, a newspaper article caught the attention of a man named Hans. It said that a doctor and his wife had left everything behind to start a new life on a remote island. The wife, Dor, was even slowly recovering from her illness. Reading this, Hans thought of his son Harry, who was suffering from tuberculosis. The treatment was so expensive that it had nearly broken the family apart. Hans then had an idea. Why not do the same as that doctor? Why not sell everything and move to that island for a new beginning? And so he did. He sold everything he owned and, along with his second wife Margaret and son Harry, set out for the lonely island. But the reality was completely different from what the newspaper had shown. The doctor and Dor's home was very simple: a small thatched hut, a tiny garden with a few fruits and vegetables, and a cute little pet donkey. The doctor called this place the Garden of Eden, a paradise. But was it really a paradise? In truth, the doctor and Dor were not even married, and they were not happy to see Hans and his family there. The moment they met, the doctor mocked them, saying, "What's this? You brought so many clothes? Looks like you're here for a picnic." He warned them that surviving on this island wasn't easy. Then he showed them the place they could stay, a dirty cave beneath a hill, with only a thin stream of water running through it. Laughing, the doctor said, "There, that's your new home." The truth was that the doctor and Dor didn't want Hans's family to stay there at all. They feared that new people would only bring more trouble. But Hans and Margaret didn't give up. They worked together, built a pond, stored water, and began setting up their home. For the doctor, the island was a dream, but for Hans and his family, it was a necessity, as they had nowhere else to go. Soon, Margaret discovered that she was pregnant. At first, they were overjoyed, but that joy quickly turned to worry. Could they really raise a child in such an isolated place? Their misfortunes didn't end there. One day, wild dogs tore apart all their canned food supplies. The whole family was devastated. The doctor, meanwhile, was lost in his writing, scribbling in his notes. Paradise is a lie. God is dead. If a man wants a good home, he must build it himself. When Margaret asked to borrow the donkey, Dor refused. They didn't want the new family to become too comfortable. And right at this point, a new character entered the story. Suddenly, loud booming sounds echoed from the seashore, and a mysterious woman arrived. She introduced herself as Baroness. Dressed in luxurious clothes, with 2 servants, she stepped onto the island not like a survivor, but like an actress walking onto a grand stage. From this moment, the story grew more complicated. The Baroness came to the island with a grand dream, to build a luxury hotel for the rich. But her arrogance was apparent from the very first meeting. When she approached Dor and extended her hand, Dor ignored her completely. The doctor too replied with a proud, dismissive tone, as if he didn't care about her at all. However, the moment the Baroness mentioned that people in the cities were talking about the doctor, a slight smile appeared on his face. He was pleased to know that people outside were discussing him, though, in reality, they were mocking him. The doctor cunningly told the Baroness that there was a water source beneath the mountain. But the truth was, the water was actually near the beach, where Hans's family had worked hard to dig a small pond. When Hans and Margaret returned home after a long day's work, they were shocked. The Baroness and her lover were bathing in their pond, as if it belonged to them. Then, the Baroness made her move. She handed Hans a bundle of letters and said, "These are for the doctor. Please deliver them to him." But the real twist was, the letters had already been opened. It was clear now, the Baroness wasn't just delivering messages. She was spreading poison between them. If Hans delivered those letters, the doctor would think that Hans and Margaret had opened them first. Hans couldn't take it anymore. He decided to confront the Baroness directly. But when he reached her place, he was stunned. The Baroness had trained the island's wild dogs and kept them under her control. Hans finally demanded, "Why are you doing all this?" The Baroness simply smiled and replied, "Think, Hans. Why did the doctor send you to me? Why didn't he share the water himself? Because the truth is, he wants to get rid of both you and me." Hans was shaken. The man he had once considered a friend was actually plotting against them all along. Yet, a question lingered in his mind. Should he side with the Baroness, or would that bring even greater danger? The story was now moving toward its true conflict. The tension between the three groups on the island was growing clearer. But then, suddenly, everything changed. The island's animals attacked the human settlements. Wild boars destroyed the doctor's vegetable garden. Meanwhile, Hans cleverly set a trap and managed to catch a bull. As time passed, his family grew stronger. They built a sturdy stone house, and their field bloomed with vegetables. Seeing this, the doctor's ideals of peace and nonviolence began too. Everyone had started taking the doctor's lofty talks as a joke now. Eventually, he too gave in, and one day, he went to Hans's place asking for a bull's head in exchange for a few chickens. Margaret seized the moment to share her pain. "Doctor, I'm about to have a baby soon. Can you please help me?" But the doctor coldly refused. Hans, without uttering a word, handed over the bull's head, and the doctor silently walked away. That very night, when the doctor roasted the bull's head on a barbecue, his wife Dor was shocked. Staring at him, she said, "We've always preached about vegetarianism, and now this? What's happening to us?" Gradually, the couple began drifting apart. If Hans's family was grounded in reality, Dor was completely idealistic. And the doctor? He was stuck between the two worlds, jealous of others' progress yet too proud to let go of his ego. The worst situation was that of the Baroness. She had come to the island to build a luxury hotel, but now all her food was gone. Her men failed to find a new water source. The dream of a grand hotel had become nothing more than an illusion. Her own men finally revolted in anger and despair. "We have no food, no garden, no hotel, no home. You've deceived us." Faced with the truth, the Baroness broke down. In rage, she ran into the forest, where she encountered Hans's son, Harry. In casual conversation, she tricked Harry into revealing a secret. Their family still had some hidden canned food. The next day, while Hans and Harry went hunting, the Baroness's men broke into their house and stole everything. And now, the story circles back to where it all began. Margaret suddenly went into intense labor pains. She thought her husband had returned, but instead, she found herself surrounded by a pack of wild dogs. Taking advantage of the chaos, the Baroness's men looted the remaining food from their home. Margaret was alone, in pain, yet she refused to give up. Despite screaming in agony, she gathered all her strength. Her cries scared the dogs away multiple times. Finally, on her knees, she gave birth to the baby. Moments later, Hans returned and drove the dogs away. The baby cried for the first time, but Margaret's condition had worsened. Hans ran to the doctor for help. The doctor had no affection for the child, but when he heard that the mother's life was in danger, he rushed to assist. His intervention saved Margaret's life. The food that the Baroness had stolen from Margaret's home, she now pretended to have provided it herself, blaming her men for the theft. Then, with cunning charm, she invited everyone to dinner. Margaret, now a mother, was weak and exhausted. She didn't want any more fights with her neighbors, so she reluctantly agreed. At the dinner table, the atmosphere was heated. Hans was silently fuming, thinking, "She stole our food and now has the audacity to serve it to us, without a hint of shame." Meanwhile, Dor seized the moment to taunt the Baroness. "You don't even know the meaning of decency." But the Baroness wasn't one to stay quiet. She struck back sharply. "And you, Margaret, you only married to get married, nothing more." Margaret ignored her and turned toward the doctor, asking calmly, "So, doctor, how's your writing coming along?" The doctor, with arrogance, replied, "If tourists didn't keep bothering me, I'd have finished long ago." At that, the Baroness frowned. "Tourists? The hotel isn't even ready yet. When my hotel is built, then the tourists will come, and I'll hire you then." The doctor didn't respond, just gave her a contemptuous smile. That look infuriated the Baroness. "Do you think you're superior to me? You write to gain admiration from people, and I build hotels for the same reason. What's the difference between us?" Dor jumped in. "Everyone knows your so-called hotel hasn't even begun construction." The Baroness snapped, spitting venomous words. "You love that donkey so much because you don't have children. Isn't that it? Or maybe your husband's the one who's barren." A dead silence filled the room. The doctor's face twisted in anger, and he shouted, "It's Dor who's barren." Dor's face turned red with humiliation. She stood up, trembling in rage. At that moment, the Baroness signaled her dogs to advance. The atmosphere was thick with tension, but she quickly called them back. It was clear that her move was just to intimidate. The doctor burst out furiously. "Get out, Baroness. This is my island." The Baroness smirked and pulled out a document. It stated that the governor had granted her 1,000 hectares of land for her hotel, while the doctor only owned 16 hectares. The dinner fell apart. Everyone left in anger. After that, things grew worse. The doctor, who once preached nonviolence and idealism, now picked up a gun and killed a wild boar. His ideals were shattered. Meanwhile, the Baroness's men were dying of hunger and thirst. One of them came to Hans's house and confessed the truth. The Baroness is a fraud. Everything about her, her manners, her talk, it's all copied from movies. And just then, the story took another strange turn. A film director suddenly arrived on the island. He wanted to make a movie about their lives and brought a huge amount of supplies with him. It felt as though God himself had descended with provisions. The doctor and the Baroness both tried to impress the director, while Hans and his family remained calm and genuine. Music played. Tears welled up in Margaret's eyes. Seeing that, the Baroness began pretending, rubbing wine near her eyes to fake tears. The doctor wasn't interested in any of this. He was busy loading up the new supplies. Meanwhile, the Baroness played her old tricks, trying to seduce and manipulate the director. But this man was different. He didn't fall for her. Instead, he treated her with respect, which ironically became her greatest insult. Then, in a cunning move, the Baroness stole all of the doctor's supplies at the perfect moment. When the doctor found out, his fury exploded. He stormed straight to Hans's home and demanded, "Decide now, are you with me or with her?" Soon, both men picked up guns and marched to confront the Baroness. The standoff was so intense that it seemed bullets could fly any second. But before disaster could strike, Margaret and Harry stepped between them, desperately calming things down. The doctor returned home, but broken in spirit. In anger, he smashed his typewriter, the very machine he had used to write about civilization and ideals. For him, all ideals were now dead. In this jungle-like world, only power was real. Gradually, he and Dor. They had now begun to stand on separate paths. The doctor had started going out for hunting, while Dahl was struggling to find anything edible that wasn't rotten. This was the same doctor who once lectured everyone about vegetarianism and the meaning of life. Now, that same man was thinking of looting others to survive. But the story wasn't going to stop there. That night, strange sounds came from Hen's yard. Thinking it was a wild animal, he panicked and fired a shot. But when he went closer, his heart sank. It wasn't a wild animal lying there. It was Dahl's beloved donkey. Overwhelmed with guilt, Hen rushed straight to the doctor and confessed, "It was an accident. I didn't mean to." But then, as their eyes met, the truth came out. How could the donkey have reached there by itself? It was clear this too was part of the Baroness's scheme. And indeed, it turned out to be true. She had sent her man, Shiho. But Shiho had grown tired of the Baroness's cruelty and revealed everything. After learning the truth, Hen and the doctor decided it was time to settle scores. They went to the Baroness's hideout, and a fierce fight broke out. In the end, the Baroness was killed by Hen's hands. The doctor didn't give anyone a chance to explain. Standing at a distance, Margaret heard the gunshot and understood everything. Together, they threw the Baroness's body into the sea and acted as if she had left the island in anger. But the other women weren't fools. They soon realized something was wrong. Meanwhile, the relationship between the doctor and Dahl began to crumble. Dahl told him plainly, "You hide behind your so-called ideals, but all you're really doing is settling scores with others." The doctor was furious. In anger, he forcefully pulled out Dahl's decayed tooth, saying, "If you want to stop the pain, you must remove it from the root." But his brutality broke Dahl completely. She was never the same again. Soon, all her chickens died after eating spoiled food. Out of pity, Margaret sent her some healthy chickens and said, "Your husband is not a good man." When she saw blood on Dahl's lips, Margaret asked, "What happened to your mouth?" That one question exposed the doctor's entire hypocrisy. He always preached about ideals, but when times got hard, he was the first to abandon them. Every excuse he made in the name of survival was just a way to justify his selfishness. Margaret tried to explain to Dahl one last time. Even if you cook a sick chicken, it will still poison you. That sentence carried all her exhaustion and despair. When Dahl returned home, she saw that the doctor had now completely rewritten his ideals. In his new writings, he declared, humans should live like animals. We must hunt, fight, and kill. Murder is the true essence of life. Dahl said nothing. She simply slaughtered the sick chicken. A few days later, news came that the doctor had fallen ill. Slowly, the poison consumed him from within until he died, bitter and unfulfilled. That summer, Shiho found a passing boat and tried to escape, but fate wasn't kind to him. The boat ran out of fuel and sank in the middle of the sea. The poor man never made it home. When autumn came, the governor arrived on the island with his men. Before dying, the doctor had written a letter accusing Hen of murdering the Baroness. The doctor was gone, but his wife Dahl believed the accusation to be true. However, Margaret wasn't one to stay silent. She stood before everyone and reasoned calmly, as if staring truth in the face. She said, "Think about it. If the doctor was sick, why? I had just given him fresh, healthy chickens the day before. How could a man who survived in the jungle for years make such a basic mistake?" The Baroness died. Then suddenly the doctor too, and Shiho ran away. So why is all suspicion only on us? Her voice grew firm. Who is the real criminal here, and who is paying the price? The governor had no answer. Margaret quietly unbuttoned her dress and said, "I have to feed my child now." Her honesty and courage silenced everyone. In the end, Dahl was taken away. Those who once dreamed of building a new state or carrying the banner of noble ideals slowly disappeared from the island. Only Margaret and her family remained, people who had made survival itself their purpose. They became the true owners of the island. Hear the story end. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and share. And for more such stories, subscribe to the channel. See you in the next story. Thank you.